So opening up the material editor, we can take a look at creating a material for our object. We're going to start with something kind of simple, something that we can get some experience with, and with using this and creating different types of maps. So I'm going to start off with a new material, and let's put it in a different shape. I'm going to go to my Create tab, and instead of my standard primitives, I'm just going to an extended primitives. I'm just going to use a torus knot. It's got a nice shape, especially for something more along the lines of reflective. I'm going to isolate this object out. Let's just reset our views. There we go. So we have an object that can reflect on itself quite nicely. I'm going to go to my Modify tab and go ahead and apply a Turbo Smooth to it. An isoline display. That way we've got a nice smooth shape to work with. Let's go ahead and just drag our material out and assign it over to it. Now for our material, we want it to have a reflective value to it, a reflective property. We also want some nice little highlights inside of it. So if we look under our first part, we can set our diffuse color. I'm going to start off with something a little bit darker. And for our specular level, our specular highlights, I'm just going to bump this one up a little bit. We'll take this one up to about the 90 range. We can take this somewhere around the 40 range. We can see how we get the nice little highlights going around. Now these are sort of fake highlights. In reality, the highlights are reflections, but we need to begin somewhere, and this is a great spot to begin. Now you can notice that we can tighten it up, and when we tighten it up, it tightens up that highlight going around. When we open it up, it's going to open up that highlight. So it depends on the surface that you're working on and what you're trying to achieve with it. I think we're going to go for something right around in here. Alright, now to get to the reflective properties, we don't really have those properties in our basic parameters here, but we do have the parameters under our maps rollout. And the map rollout down here at the bottom, we see a reflection and refraction. We're going to go for the reflection. I'm just going to check that one on. And in the map type, I'm going to click on the none so that we can apply a map type. And we are going to use a fall off. And you'll see the material in a second. This is what a fall off looks like. It's basically a gradient that goes across it. Now on our gradient from the black to the white, the black to the white, we're going to apply a reflective type property. We're going to use our ray tracer. So again, selecting on that bottom option there, we're going to select ray trace. And the ray trace is basically going to provide us some reflections on our object. I'm going to go back up to the parent. We can actually leave these as default. Default values are going to work just fine for us. So as we go back up to the parent, we can see that we've got it assigned here. Now we've got two options. We've got a perpendicular parallel right underneath for the fall off type, and we also have a Fresnel fall off. Both work well, and we'll start off with our perpendicular, render it out, and see what we think about it. Alright, we go all the way back up to our parent. We can see the properties that we've got. We'll select in this view. Let's go up to our render option, our little teapot up here. Left click on it to render it. And there we go. We can see some reflections happening right in here on the object. The highlights coming in here. Not too bad. And we can even put a plane in our scene. So I'm going to go to my geometry, my standard primitive, and I'm just going to drag out a plane. Maybe drop that somewhere in there. There we go. Now with that basic color, we'll let that be, and then we'll hit render. And we can see some of that reflection happening a whole lot more on our object right in here. Makes us get that sense of something very metallic and glossy. Now let's say we want to adjust our fall off. We'll go back to our reflection, and we'll change our fall off type. Instead of the parallel, let's just do a Fresnel. And let's make a clone of this one so we've got one to compare to, and then we're going to hit render. Alright, we look at both of them, and this is one of those useful things with cloning, That way you can kind of take a look back and forth at them and see exactly what is it doing different between the different material types. And this is part of that process, whether it's lighting a scene or creating a material. You're typically going to do a lot of comparing back and forth to give you a better understanding of what's actually going on while you're working on it. So in here you can see that the main difference that we see is sort of the intensity that's happening in here. There's other things going on, but just the general, that's the main thing that's going to be happening. Alright, so I'm going to close that guy out. Now between the two, this is just a chance for you to pick and choose what you actually want to work with. Additionally, we can use our mix curve at the bottom to adjust how that fall off happens. We can move our points around. We can also change up our point by right-clicking on it, making it a Bezier curve. And that's going to adjust the fall off and the mixing between the two for us as well. Alright, let's go ahead and go back up to the parent, and then you have your overall amount that can be applied. So let's say you wanted to bump that down something a little bit lower. We could actually bump that down, and it's going to soften it out. I'll leave mine up at about 100%. That gives us a pretty decent map to work with. A couple of things we can do. We can actually take it all the way dark, do a render of that, get a sense of how does the black, the darker color come out. We say it looks pretty good like that. I'd say that we really want to tighten up our glossiness here. Let's render that again. There we go. We get this nice line coming in right in there. We could even brighten that up just to increase the length of that line, and we could play a little bit bigger. Let's say we went down to about 65, just to spread that out along those edges a little bit more. And then we could also take it all the way to the white, almost white. We'll step back just a little bit, and let's say we render that one out. There we go. We still get those nice little reflections in there. So this way gives you a chance to play with the material, play with what it's going to look like inside of the scene, what kind of reflections you're going to get on it before you actually apply it to the object that you're working on. Sometimes the object that you're working on might be a little bit more complex, and it might be a little more difficult to see how the material is really affecting it. So a good way of working with materials is just with a default object and testing that material on that object. Alright, so we're looking pretty good there. Let's go ahead and get rid of the objects in the scene. There we go. And let's reset our views here. I'm going to leave this guy right up here. Our plane in the scene, we could go ahead and center that. And our character is pretty much center. We'll just do a quick center on him. And let's bring him down to his feet right there on that 0 plane. There we go. So this gives us a good material to go with, and let's go ahead and apply this material to some of the objects, materials that are in here. Now we could do a multi-sub object, but to begin with, let's just start with what we have. We're going to change these guys up and apply some of the material types that were on here. Now the easiest way to do this, we could go back in and recreate it, or we could simply go back in to our map. We can right click on the map type, and we can just do copy, go right back up to here, and on our reflection we'll do paste. I'm going to do a paste instance so I can use this as my main material, that if I make adjustments to it, it'll change that reflection parameter out for each one. Alright, and let's take this down just a little bit. We're going to make that a little lighter. And our specular, we like the specular in here. We're about 128 and 65, so we'll bump this guy up somewhere a little bit higher. Let's see, this was 128 and 65. There we go, somewhere in there. Let's do a quick render just with that one. We'll test out how that material is looking. And we look pretty good in here. You'll notice how some of it doesn't quite come out the way we might think it's going to come out. That's also based on the lighting that we're going to apply, and we'll see that in a little bit. And it's also the subdivision level of our object. So I'm going to go ahead and apply a turbo smooth to our object. Bump our iterations up just a couple. Turn our isoline display on. And let's re-render that guy this time. We get a little bit smoother, those highlights come in a little bit better for us. I like that. And let's go ahead and just push the options back out to the rest of them. This is actually more of a matted color. We don't want it to be too reflective, so we're going to leave it like it is. We've got a lens piece right around the front. That one can definitely have a reflection on it, so we're going to paste an instance of it right there. And we're looking for something with a nice bright spot, maybe a little bit bigger of a fall off. And then we've got our white material here. Again, our reflection, paste an instance of it. And let's bump up our highlight value just a little bit there. Okay, so that gives us a really good start at our basic material. We're going to make some tweaks on it as we start setting in lighting, but let's go ahead and render it out, see where we're at, see how it feels. We'll get in kind of close, Shift F, so that we can see the frame of what's actually being rendered. Let's see if we can get in there like that. There we go. Alright, so we can definitely see some of the reflections going on in here and some of the highlighting. It definitely has that glossy feel to it. So I think we're definitely in the right direction, and as we apply our lighting and adjust our material in the next video, we'll start to wrap up our material, our lighting. That'll set us up to do a render. Alright, we'll start working on that next.